All right, let's unpack this. We've got just one source for our deep dive today. It's an excerpt of entertainment news from the Indian Express dated May 31st, 2025.
Right. And our goal really is to sift through this snapshot, pull out the interesting bits, the surprises, what seems most relevant for you.
Exactly. Think of it as getting the pulse of what's buzzing right now. Bollywood, Hollywood, a bit beyond, all from this one source.
Yeah, this dive should help you quickly get a handle on the mix. Personal stories, industry critiques, even global events affecting famous people. It's about getting informed sort of efficiently, seeing what this particular day's news reveals.
Absolutely. Consider this your direct line, basically, to what this source thought was important on that day. So pulling from this source, then, where do we see, the past meeting the present? A really striking point it brings up is the Beatles' trip to India.
Oh, yeah, that's always fascinating. And the source doesn't just mention it, right? It talks about transcendental meditation and claims it changed the Abbey Road musicians forever.
Yeah.
That's quite a statement.
It really is. What's fascinating here, I think, is how the source draws that direct line. From a spiritual retreat to a huge shift in the band, even linking it to that specific album.
Yeah, it's framing it as more than just a famous trip, but like a real turning point that you could hear in their music. That's the implication anyway.
Right. Okay, so moving from one huge name shaping their art to another dealing with, well, something quite different. Tom Cruise. This source gives a specific kind of persistent detail about him.
Okay.
It says he tried to get Seth Rogen into Scientology, not just once, twice.
Wow, okay. Twice. And Rogen's reaction.
Well, the quote here is him feeling weak-minded during it and being glad Judd Apatow was there.
That specific anecdote, it gives you a very particular, maybe slightly awkward glimpse into, how things might work at those levels of fame. Personal beliefs and professional interactions reportedly mixing.
Yeah, it's quite specific. The source also pauses to note the passing of Loretta Swit, Emmy winner.
Ah, Major Julian from Marriage.
Exactly. The source calls it a pioneering series and remembers her iconic role.
Right. A little nod to TV history there. Reminds you these new snapshots capture a current buzz, but also, look back at legacies.
And speaking of legacies, there's a really strong push in this source for Pankaj Kapur.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it argues he really deserves a Padma Shri, calls him a national treasure.
Does it give reasons?
It specifically mentions his work in Ek Doctor Ki Maut as a reason to, and this is a direct quote, put some respect on Pankaj Kapur's name.
Wow. So that's not just reporting news, is it? It's advocacy right there in the source. Using a specific film to argue for honoring him. Shows how entertainment news can also be about critical appraisal, pushing for recognition.
Definitely shows that active conversation. So just thinking about these few stories, Beatles, Cruise Rogen, Swit, Kapur, what stands out to you about this range, even just within the iconic label?
It's the mix, isn't it? You've got this historical event supposedly having deep artistic impact.
Right.
Then a very specific, personal, almost gossipy interaction. Then a somber note marking the end of a career. And finally, this strong argument for honoring a living legend. It pulls from very different places.
Okay, let's move from those established figures maybe to some more candid glimpses behind the curtain. Industry realities, personal struggles, all reported in this source. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Some raw honesty.
Okay.
Sarveen Chawla shares a really disturbing story. She says a director tried to kiss her in his cabin.
Oh, wow.
And the timing. Apparently moments after they'd just been talking about her husband and her marriage.
Ugh, that detail right after talking about her husband makes it particularly jarring, doesn't it? Really highlights the vulnerability, especially for women, in those power dynamics. A stark example of inappropriate conduct being called out.
Absolutely. And the pressures aren't just about behavior, are they? Kusha Kapila talks really openly about ageism and body shaming at 33.
What did she say?
Well, things like being offered roles for 50-year-old aunties, being jobless sometimes, clothes not fitting, dealing with trolls.
That sounds incredibly tough.
Yeah, but her reported stance is pretty firm. She says she isn't answerable to anyone commenting on her body.
Good for her. That quote really captures that pushback against intense scrutiny, doesn't it? Especially the physical expectations in entertainment. It shows that intersection of, personal identity, career, and public judgment.
And Neha Dhupia sort of echoes some of that, recounts her own hard times, jobless, clothes issues, trolling, and credits her husband, Kabir Bedi, for his support.
It shows that shared experience, I suppose. the vulnerability, but also relying on personal support when you're under that spotlight or facing industry lows.
The source also includes some pretty pointed criticism from inside Bollywood. Suraj Pancholi apparently calls some colleagues cowards.
Really?
Doesn't specify who, but contrasts them with what he sees as the actual unity of Jackie Shroff and Sunil Shetty's generation.
Interesting generational comparison there.
And Neil Neaton Mukesh adds a more general comment, calls out toxicity in the film industry, and says everyone is frustrated.
Okay, so taken together, those comments suggest, well, a fair bit of internal frustration maybe. A feeling, at least from these actors, that there's less solidarity now compared to the past. That's what the source reports them saying.
And the candidness isn't just about struggles. Kabir Bedi apparently discussed his open marriage with his first wife, Protoma, quite frankly.
Okay.
And also openly shared about growing close to Parveen Baby.
That kind of historical transparency years later about complex relationships, it definitely adds layers to how you might see these public figures, moves beyond the simple narratives.
Yeah, definitely. On the international side, the source mentions ex-Big Bang's T.O.P.
Right.
He admitted past mistakes for the first time through a character he played, a failed drug addict, the source says. And he's quoted saying he can finally move on with his life.
So using his art, his character, as a way to publicly acknowledge and maybe process his own past.
It's interesting. And then there's a really significant story connecting personal experience to, like, major history. Shabana Azmi being denied a flat because of her faith.
Wow.
That's what the source reports. And it includes Javed Akhtar reflecting on the bitterness of partition in that context.
That specific incident, tying a personal experience of discrimination back to the partition, it shows how these huge historical events can still resonate and impact people personally generations later. All these stories together, they really paint a picture of the varied, often quite challenging realities behind the glamour.
It certainly adds a lot of depth, doesn't it, beyond just the public face? Okay, let's shift focus slightly again. Let's look at some remarkable journeys and legacies highlighted in this source. The arcs of careers.
Right here.
One story that really jumps out, and it's mentioned twice actually, is the childhood of this director of a massive Rs 800 crore blockbuster.
Okay, what's the story?
Well, the source details his beginnings. Selling eggs outside a bar when he was 6, washing toilets, running a vada pav stand, even sweeping floors at a film studio.
Wow, that's quite the start. So the source isn't just telling a rags to riches tale, it's emphasizing the specifics of that struggle.
Exactly.
Highlighting that extreme contrast. Sweeping floors to commanding an 800 crore hit, it frames the journey as just monumental overcoming.
Truly underscores the scale, yeah. Then there's another look back into history, this time from Mumtaz. She recounts buying Meena Kumari's Bandra bungalow. And the detail the source includes is that Meena Kumari apparently knew she would die soon.
Oh, poignant.
And also, significantly, that she was not bankrupt when she sold it.
Ah, okay. So that adds a specific layer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He maybe corrects a common misconception about her final years and highlights this reported foresight about her own mortality. Interesting detail.
And Vinod Khanna's journey gets some attention, too.
Right. He had that period away.
Yeah, the source mentions him getting bored at Osho's ashram.
The Rajneesh community.
Gossiping about it with Kabir Bedi, being broke when he came back to India and having to start over from a one-room flat.
Again, these details really humanize someone famous, don't they? Shows the spiritual searching, the financial hardship, needing to rebuild from scratch. Life takes unexpected turns, even for stars.
Definitely. And just a lovely little historical note, Sharmila Tagore remembering the best outdoor ever while shooting Aranyar Din Ratri.
Oh, nice. A little positive memory connecting a great actress to a classic film. Just a personal glimpse. These stories really show how the source finds narrative in those varied, sometimes really surprising paths people take.
Okay, now let's turn to what's, currently generating buzz and reactions, according to this source.
The current hot topics.
Yeah. There's news about Mira Rajput's organization apparently selling stress management sessions for Ara's 1.75 lakh.
Wow, 1.75 lakh rupees. That's a lot.
Right. And the source makes sure to note the social media reaction to that specific high price.
So highlighting the price and the reactions suggests the source sees the story's hook in the public response, right? Questions about cost, access, privilege maybe.
Seems like it. And then there's a very public clash reported between Laxman Utakar, director of Chava, and Anura Kashyap.
Oh, what's that about?
Utikar is quoted directly slamming Kashyap's comments about Bollywood is dying.
Okay, that's direct.
Yeah, calls him a Gnani, like a know-it-all, says nobody's forcing him to stay in Bollywood, and apparently even told him to get lost at one point.
Oof. Strong words.
Yeah.
And mentioned multiple times, he said.
Yeah, the source seems to emphasize the directness of it.
So it's presenting this as a significant public disagreement, a kind of fault line within the industry itself about its health, maybe.
Right.
But the blunt quotes really drive home the intensity.
Seems that way. On the box office front, there's a specific update. Rajkumar Rao and Wamika Gabi's Gulchik Maaf is apparently set to cross the Rs 50 crore mark, and it beat Varun Dhawan's Baby John at the box office on day 8.
Right, okay. Concrete numbers, comparisons, a clear snapshot of who's doing well right now, commercially speaking.
And the source also touches on various event highlights, the usual news cycle stuff.
Like what?
The Thug Life trailer launch, Kamal Hassan, Trisha, Silambarasan stealing the spotlight, Abarami getting emotional, the Udam Banshala Vision audio launch, a note about Dhanush and A.R. Rahman performing together,
Right.
and mentions of celebrity Mother's Day tributes Salman Khan and Virat Kohli are named.
Got it. So those lighter event-based items show the source also captures that ongoing rhythm of promotions and personal sharing that fills up entertainment news.
Right. Now, moving on to stories that sort of bridge entertainment with broader context, social, political.
Okay.
This source includes news about Taylor Swift, gives 7 major updates concerning her reputation and music masters.
Ah, the rights to her music. Big story.
Yeah, focusing on her reportedly paying a jaw-dropping amount to buy back the rights to her first 6 albums.
That really highlights the business side, doesn't it? The fight for control over your own work and the huge money involved. The source frames it as a major win for her.
Definitely. Then there's an item connecting Diddy and Donald Trump.
Oh, how so?
The source reports Trump saying their relationship busted up, and that he doesn't rule out pardon for Diddy, who it calls the disgraced mogul. These are Trump's reported claims.
Right. An example of how people from very different public arenas, music, business, politics, can end up linked in the news cycle.
And this source also includes news involving PM Modi and an event for Operation Synindor.
Okay, what does it report?
It reports the PM saying India won't tolerate proxy wars, and quoting him, "If you fire a bullet, expect shells in return."
Strong words on national security.
Yes. And it also reports he praised the strength of Indian women, specifically mentioning BSF daughters at this event. The source notes the event also included launching the Indore Metro and inaugurating 2 airports, and it identifies Operation Synindor as a significant counterinsurgency operation. We're just relaying what the source reports here.
Understood. It shows how news from the political sphere, including specific statements and events, can appear right alongside entertainment headlines in a general news source like this.
And interestingly, the source links this to a comment from Javed Akhtar.
Oh, yeah. About what?
About Bollywood's silence over Operation Synindor. It quotes him saying, "Kuch log abhi paisa aur naam kamane mein lajahan."
Which means?
Roughly, some people are currently focused just on earning money and fame.
Ah, okay. So that specific detail shows how entertainment figures sometimes get drawn into discussions about national events and how their perceived silence, or their commentary like Akhtar's observation here, can actually become news itself. Again, just reporting what the source states.
Okay, to wrap up our look through this source, just a couple more international tidbits it included.
All right.
There's news concerning Elon Musk. It involves specific allegations reported in the source.
Such as?
That he secretly had a baby with Japanese pop star, which his ex alleges. And this is amidst heavy ketamine abuse claims. The source presents these purely as allegations.
Right. Those kinds of stories, focusing on the very personal lives of global figures, including specific, sometimes sensational claims, that's definitely part of international entertainment news coverage.
And finally, a really intriguing little detail about South Korean actors Park Bogum and Kim So-hun. The source mentions Park Bogum made a specific request to Kim So-hun years ago. Apparently he said, "Remember this when the time comes."
No. Related to what?
Reportedly related to casting for a project called Good Boy.
Huh. That's a very specific, almost cryptic little anecdote, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gives you a tiny peek into maybe the long-term relationships or promises or dynamics that can influence casting behind the scenes.
Yeah.
A small detail, but quite specific.
It really does highlight the sheer variety, doesn't it? The range of stories making up entertainment news globally, even just in one day's report from this source.
Wow. Okay, looking back at everything this one excerpt covered, I mean, from historical trips changing music legends
Right.
to really raw personal struggles with harassment, body image, pointed industry critiques, these incredible rags to riches stories. The clashes over Bollywood's future.
Yeah. Artists buying back their work, interceptions with politics, international scandals. It's quite a mosaic.
It truly is. And this particular collection, raises an interesting question for me. How do all these seemingly separate pieces, the deeply personal stories, the public fights, the history, the current buzz, how do they all come together to shape our understanding of the entertainment world?
Yeah, what does this specific mix reveal? The personal next to the political, the legacy beside the box office numbers. What does it tell us about fame itself, or industry pressures, or maybe the relationship between public figures and us, the audience, today?
And maybe in a world where personal lives, politics, careers are all tangled up and playing out publicly, perhaps what's most revealing isn't just the individual stories themselves, but which stories a source like this chooses to highlight. What does that tell us about what counts as news and entertainment right now?
That's a really interesting thought to end on, something to consider as you navigate the news yourself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into today's source material.